welcome to week 3, and maybe we can finally take the pilot tag off this one, although we're still not sure. The third week of our Ulster Rugby Round-Up podcast. I'm Gareth Hanna, and my fellow Scuds are Jonathan Bradley.
How's it going, guys?
And Adam McKendry.
Hey, guys.
And we are Scuds because, of course, we spent all of last week talking about how easy Ulster were going to have it at the weekend. So, Johnny, how did they lose to Zebra?
Well, I think first of all we should note that Zebra played very well. There was a lot to like about what Zebra were doing, but we'll maybe leave that for the Zebra podcast boys to take care of. So we'll focus on what went wrong with Ulster. For me, I mean, the stats been thrown out there. 47 is the number of combined handling errors and missed tackles. You're not going to win a game like that against anybody, Zebra or not. They started with knocking the ball on, they finished with knocking the ball on, and in between knocked the ball on an awful lot. And just an absolute pile of missed tackles that allowed Zebra to really show a fairly young and exciting backline, to be honest. But yeah, it's not going to be a pretty review for Ulster, I would say.
No. So can we put a finger on why were there so many errors?
It's very hard to put your finger on. I mean, Les spoke about it yesterday to myself and Johnny, just saying, how difficult it was. And I mean, look, I'm going to agree with Johnny and say that Zebra did play well, but I'm going to disagree and say, look, that Ulster side should have had the beating of them very easily, no matter how well Zebra played. Maybe that's not disagreeing with you, but no matter how well Zebra played, that Ulster team should have had more than enough to win that game. But we allowed Zebra to make 494 metres, 22 missed tackles is everything you need to say. Defensively, it was just so poor. And I mean, it's just so unlike what we've seen from Ulster so far this season. After all the hype we gave them over the first 4 games, I mean, that was just a real crash back down to reality. It was poor.
Is that what it is? A reality check for maybe anybody who might have been getting their hopes up and thinking that we're going to win everything now?
I don't know why you're looking at me and not Adam when you say people who are getting their hopes up. One of us was definitely more enthused than the other, but no, I mean, this is the thing. It's impossible for us to know what causes professional sportsmen to go out and develop an inability to do things that they've done every day of their adult life. I mean, I've never been a good enough player. Any mistake I ever made was because I'm not very good. So it's difficult to really...
In journalism as in rugby?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like me forgetting how to spell 5-letter words or something when you're seeing the amount of missed tackles and drop balls. But it has to be... So that has to be an issue of mentality, which is what I asked Les on Monday of, was this a mindset thing when you see so many mistakes? There was obviously a very disrupted preparation, which, they had problems with their flight in Belfast, which delayed them. Then they had to go via Antwerp to get the plane fixed, missed out on their captain's run. But John O'Gibbs was up just there, just gone at the press conference, and I asked him about this, and his response fairly bluntly was, I'd love to know how an aeroplane makes somebody drop a ball. So he's not one, not taking any nonsense from these questions, and 2, not looking to make any excuses about what's gone wrong here. And I mean, you could tell the man was not happy. Like he was in no mood to try and sugarcoat this in any way, which is good to see, I suppose.
The thing is, it goes beyond the missed tackles and the drop balls. Those were such a big part of it. But I mean, in that second half, Ulster just did not look like breaking down Zebra at all. I mean, Zebra employed a fantastic rush defence. They were right up in Ulster's faces, and Ulster just continued to pass the ball along the back line, and they got absolutely nowhere. It was crying out for someone just to chip it over the top or, pin them back. We saw Lele Afano do that against the Scarlets. It needed someone just to put boot to ball or try something a little different, because they were getting absolutely nowhere. There was no leadership on that pitch, grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and saying, guys, we've got to change something here. And that for me is just as disappointing as all those missed tackles and drop balls. There was no creativity to sort of say we've got to try something different. And the thing is, Ulster did look good for part of it. Up until they dropped the ball. I know they dropped the ball a lot, but up until they did drop the ball, they looked good. They had good strike runners. Rodney Ayew making that great burst, right at the very start. That was brilliant. And then of course he dropped the ball, which I think we're going to have to name this podcast, given the number of times I've said that phrase.
I don't know if we can say everything was going right till it went wrong. I mean, I suppose that's the way things are. But it's interesting that you talk about why they didn't chip the ball over the top when they were faced with this rush defence. And as Jono said today, when we asked him about it, was there a plan B? And he said, well, how do we know the plan A didn't work when we didn't actually go out there and execute it?
Yeah.
But the point about the rush defence, I think, is really, really important, because when BBC came back from the game, there was no time for post-match, but we just saw the death glare from Stephen Ferris about... he's probably said as much as he could have said with any words of what he thought about that second half, but... the BBC had up on their website then later on, they put the post-match album with Andy Ward saying this Zebra provided a blueprint for how to play Ulster, and I think that's going to be key, because I watched the Connacht Scarlets game on Friday night and just making notes as it was going along. The thing that I kept coming back to was line speed in defence, determination in defence, and I was thinking to myself, Ulster haven't faced this type of team when they have the ball yet this season. I admit I didn't think it was going to come the next day, but I think it'll be really, really important to see how Ulster deal with what I think is going to be a similar type of defensive performance from Connacht this week.
Yeah, well, we can maybe be kind and say it was the aeroplane that made them drop the ball. Here's what Les Kiss thought of all the errors after the match.
I think it's a collection of things. I think the guys' attitude was fine, and maybe they tried too hard at times and forced elements of the game to try and break open Zebra. We came to a try decision that was disallowed late. On certain visions it wasn't a penalty, and it should have been a try. But the game, if we managed it better earlier, mightn't have been that close. So we have to accept, our medicine in that area. But I think it's also. It'd be remiss not to recognise what Zebra did. They played well. Their line speed was very good. Put our skills under pressure, and we made these forced errors and unforced errors. So you have to recognise that. I think Zebra, played a pretty good style of rugby as well.
All right, so for this game then, there's been a lot of talk of all the changes. 12, I think, changes were made for the lineup for this match. So. Are people right to sort of question, was that the right thing to do, or what's your thoughts on it all?
Well, as I've already alluded to, this Ulster team should have had more than enough to win in Zebra. It wasn't a weak team by any stretch of the imagination. You were welcoming Henderson back, John Cooney, Christian Lealefano. That's just to name three. It wasn't a weak team that they sent across. Johnny's been saying, 12 changes, but they were 12 changes for the better. Mm-hmm. It's not like we were doing a Dragons move from the week before and we were resting 12 players looking ahead. We were bringing 12 players back in, and that, I think, is the big difference. It wasn't a weak team. That's just.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter afterwards, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was just kind of chirping, saying that this was an outrageous show of arrogance from Ulster to make this amount of changes, showing disrespect to Zebra. And I think that really kind of missed the boat of these were changes that made this team better. Yeah. The boys who are coming back in were a lot closer to what we expect to see on Friday night, and more importantly, almost the Friday after building into Europe. But I don't know whether either of you boys heard the Hard Yards podcast this week, but they had Ronan O'Gara on, talking about how far in advance they look at selection, and it was a really interesting perspective of how things are done down to the minute with these coaches, and 4, 5, 6 weeks in advance. So this wasn't obviously the team that Ulster planned to send over there, because there was a lot of talk about leadership in that pack and how it wasn't there without Chris Henry. But Chris Henry had played the last 4 games, plus the 2 friendlies, so he'd gone 6 weeks in a row. But taking that out, when Ulster were drawing this plan up for this to be the game that Chris Henry missed, Rory Best was supposed to be back coming off the bench, but obviously wasn't because of the hamstring injury. Marcel Coetzee was meant to be back playing in this game, but obviously it wasn't an intention of they went out without any of their leaders. It was just they couldn't send Chad out there again. And Stu McCluskey as well was meant to play. He was down to play this game originally, but then had to go the week before because Luke Marshall picks up the injury in training, so he misses the week. And then you're left with, this wasn't quite the team that was meant to go over there as well, and I just think that's important to note.
For me, that's you should be rising above that, but I get.
Oh no, like I understand you should be rising above it, but it's just to give a sort of insight into the train of thought that there wasn't any leaders there without Chris Henry. That wasn't the plan per se. They obviously thought they were going to have Best for this game coming off the bench, and they thought Coetzee was going to be there.
Well, for everybody's sanity, let's just forget that happened altogether and move on to Friday night, a chance to put everything right against Connacht. And ahead of this game, I think I've found the perfect guest. If we're to have guests coming on to the podcast, I think I found the first one who would provide perfect, lengthy, in-depth answers to questions, and that is, of course, Connacht coach Kieran Keane, because we all saw his interview after the defeat to Cardiff Blues, and I would absolutely love to have him on to give us some of those absolute gems. So it was a great interview, wasn't it?
Oh, it was brilliant. It brought back to mind Brendan Ventnor all those years ago with his 3 cheers for Sir Ali Bobo. Same guy as well doing the interview, Graham Simmons at Sky. But no, but I mean, by all accounts, just from what we heard yesterday from Connacht, Kieran Keane wasn't there. But from what we heard from Nigel Carlin and John Muldoon at the European launch there, he was fairly embarrassed when he saw it back and didn't realise it had came across the way it did, shall we say.
My favourite bit was Graham Simmons, the interviewer, who just remained so confident throughout it. And it was just like, I mean, your players, Kieran. It was fantastic. I loved it.
I like having characters in the league who'll give interviews like that. I mean, maybe not every week, because as journalists, we would like some sound bites to put in our articles.
You wouldn't want to be the one with the microphone anyway.
No. So, Graham, you did a very good job. But, maybe that speaks of the passion of the guy, that after a defeat like that, he just couldn't find the words to sum it up. And I know certainly a lot of the Connacht guys are speaking quite highly of him and just what he's brought so far and just what he's trying to bring with his new coaching staff. So I think this is maybe just frustration more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to think that it was the frustration of how the last 2 minutes in that game went against Cardiff rather than the realisation that he's got quite the job on his hands this season.
Only one win then so far for Connacht over Kings, but they lost to Scarlets then after that Cardiff Blues defeat. But will Keane have been any more sort of perked up by what he saw last weekend?
Absolutely, I was pretty impressed with them by and large. On Friday night, as I said, their defence was really good. If you just looked at the score, it probably looked a lot worse than it was, because they had a conversion that would have drawn them level in the last couple of minutes, and then Scarlets went up the other end and scored a try that probably put a bit of an unfair reflection. I mean, it could have been a draw, and they were far better than what I'd expected. Obviously, Tiernan O'Halloran was back from injury. He's a player I love watching. He's great value watching for Connacht. Their back row as well. Owen McCone came in for his first start of the season. Jake Heenan came in for his second start of the season. So they've, along with John Muldoon, they'll have sort of their more settled back row there as well. It's not this is not the team that won the Pro 12 2 years ago by any means, but it'll be interesting to see what they bring up the Kingspan on Friday night.
Mm-hmm. You've got to remember it's an Interpro. I mean, everyone raises their game for an Interpro. It's just like an unwritten rule that you have to do it. You mentioned O'Halloran. I'm really interested to see how he goes against Jacob Stockdale. That matchup on the wing is going to be really interesting. But Connacht, you're right, they improved against the Scarlets. Still on the wrong end of the result, so they've got a lot to prove, certainly at this early stage of the season. I mean, if you look at the results alone, you think to yourself, oh goodness, we're back to Connacht of 4 or 5 years ago, where they were scrapping it out at the bottom of the table with the Italian teams. they're not that. You know, they are a better team than that, and they're welcoming guys back from injury. They're welcoming back O'Halloran. Kieran Marmion's probably going to start this week. He didn't start for them last week. You know, it is going to be a bit of a different team that comes up here with a point to prove. They've got a couple former Ulster guys in their ranks as well. Conor Carey, Finlay Balaam, Rory Scholes. They're going to be involved, and you know, it's going to be a very tough one for Ulster, because Connacht, as the so-called fourth province in Ireland, which I think they've proved over the last few years they're not anymore. You know, they would love more than anything to cause a scrap, and I mean certainly since they haven't won here in over 50 years, you know, they'd love nothing more than to end that. And you know, they've pushed us close in the past couple of years. You know, we haven't had it all our own way whenever Connacht have come up here, and I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same on Friday night.
Yeah. I was going to ask you there if Connacht aren't the fourth province, who is? But
Wow.
we'll leave that one. Maybe. Yeah, you mentioned there their record up here. It's mad, the fact that they haven't won up here in so long. I mean, November 1960. JFK had just been elected president. Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable had just finished filming their last ever film, and Elvis had just recorded Are You Lonesome Tonight. That's how long we're talking about going back here.
Well, thank you very much to our 1960 expert, Jonathan Bradley. The two guys then were at the Champions Cup launch on Monday, and they spoke to Connacht captain John Muldoon about his side's abysmal record in Belfast.
Yeah, it's a difficult place to go to. I think the crowd don't make it easy for you. They get on the ref. They make it a hard place to go to. And I think Ulster really perform well at home. I think over the years it's been a pretty hard place. I think over the last couple of seasons, in Pat's reign, I think we've come away with 2 or 3 bonus points and been a little bit unlucky once or twice. So we're closing the gap, but it's a tough place to go to. And you look at the Ulster squad, and you look at some of the players they have a quality team. They'll definitely be disappointed with the result at the weekend, but unlike us, they've started very well with a little blip last weekend, so I'm sure they'll be looking forward to us coming up there.
And not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but nobody else is going to do it, so we're 2 for 2 with our games of the week. We called it right again last week in that Rainey beat Belfast Harlequins 23-7, and with more of the results from last weekend's All-Ireland League games, here's Adam.
Yeah, Division 1B, it went quite well for Ulster teams. Banbridge defeated Naas 42-35. Ballynahinch won away to Dolphin 33-16. However, Ballymena lost away to UL Bohemian 36-13. That leaves Banbridge third with 12 points, Ballynahinch fourth with 11, and Ballymena eighth with 5 points. In Division 2A, all 3 Ulster teams won. Malone were away to Cashel. They won 18-16. City of Armagh against Galway Corinthians 42-18, and Queen's University away to Highfield 16-14. City of Armagh and Malone are first and second with 13 points, and Queen's are one place behind them in third with 10 points. In Division 2B, Rainey Old Boys, as we said, they won the Ulster Derby against Belfast Harlequins 23-7. However, there were defeats for City of Derry against Skerries and Dungannon against Old Crescent. Rainey are 4th with 9 points, Dungannon 7th with 6 points, City of Derry 8th with 5 points, and Quins are 10th, who are yet to score a point. And in Division 2C, there are wins for Bangor away to Middleton, and Omagh put 8 tries against Bective Rangers in a 52-17 win. Omagh lead the league with 12 points, and Bangor are 5th with 9 points.
Fantastic. Well, we'll let Adam take a breath, and me and Johnny will have a little look at this week's game of the week, which is Ballymena against the mighty Banbridge on Friday night. So Banbridge, as Adam said, they're sitting third, Johnny, and just a point off the top of the table. I mean, it's been a great start.
Yeah, it was interesting, that Banbridge game, because obviously they'd been in a winning position the week before and let that slip to have that draw, where it was a game that they probably really thought they should have won against UCC from where they were. Mm-hmm. So the fact that in their game on Saturday they were winning handily enough, the lead was cut to a point, but this time exercised any demons of the week before and went on to win. So yeah, good start for them. Good start for a lot of the Ulster boys, 2A as well. It's great to see the 3 teams up there, but
I had turned it off, but I'm turning it back on because Johnny just absolutely froze there and then went, I don't know what I'm talking about. Which basically sums up the whole podcast in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I just started talking about too many different games at once and I confused myself. So, yes, sorry.
When in doubt, talk about Banbridge.
Yeah, our game of the week, Banbridge Ballymena at Eden Park on Friday night. It's going to be a big one, especially, I suppose, for Banbridge to keep this momentum going. But Ballymena, the way they've started, winning 1, lost 2, they're not going to want to give away anything at home either. And I don't know what you boys think of it. I'm going to predict a Banbridge win here and keep going with keep predicting Daniel Soper to win things until he gives me any reason not to. So.
You're absolutely spot on. I mean, Soper's record there has been fantastic, and it was such having done a lot of stuff with Daniel whenever I started in journalism working in paper in Banbridge. It was such a struggle for them to get out of 2B, and there were a couple of years where really they felt they should have, but they just fell away. So, but the club has just kept progressing, which has been absolutely fantastic, and he's been such a massive part of that. So, it's just great to see them starting the season so well, and yeah, it's hard to see anything other than a Banbridge this weekend.
It's going to be huge for Ulster to get a presence in 1A. Somebody has to get back up there, and if Banbridge do slip up this week, or Ballyhin should breathing right down their necks as well. So hopefully we're going to see those two teams make a real push to give us that presence in the top division as well.
Yeah, could Banbridge really get promoted twice in a row? I mean, it was so difficult to get out of 2B, so surely getting 2 promotions in or 2A, sorry, they got out of, wasn't it?
2A.
So to get 2 promotions in a row surely is too much to ask, is it?
Oh, it's good. There's a good side there. There's a good core of local lads and a good sprinkling of Ulster involvement there as well. So, I mean, long may it continue the way they've started.
Well, we'll have to give a mention then as well to Omagh in 2C, as Adam told us, top of the league, 8 tries at the weekend. They're just absolutely brilliant.
Yes, speaking of teams that are progressing at pace, I mean, 3 years ago around this time, I remember covering a Q2 game, Omagh against Hollywood at Kerr Park, and to see how they've came in the 3 years since is unbelievable. To get up in the All-Ireland League is an achievement in itself. I know Bangor did it the year before, but that round robin is notoriously difficult to get out of. But Omagh have obviously done it. They've built really well, and now the way they've started, they're flying basically. And
again, this week we've had plenty of your questions coming in, so thank you for those. Please do keep them coming. But again, I got one this week, so I'm claiming second place in the fame rankings of the podcast trio. But Johnny's still first. So, Johnny, give us some of your questions there.
Yeah, well, we had Kyle McNeely, one of our diehard Ulster expats over in London, wanted to know that with Ulster's poor record of blooding forwards, should we see as much of Ray and Timothy moving forward as possible to give them that experience of rugby at this level to bring them along?
First of all, we should point out that Matty Ray is 24 and Nick Timley is 22. They're not exactly considered young cubs anymore. They're still young in terms of their rugby careers, but whenever you consider that Ian Henderson burst onto the scene at 19, Stephen Ferris was bursting onto the scene around the same age, the chance for them to sort of establish themselves as potential international players, their window is shortening dramatically. You do want to see them progress, and if anyone knows me, they know I love to see young players being given their chance, but you've got to do it smartly. You can't throw 3 young back rows into a game altogether. You have to have that mix of experience with the likes of Henry or even Henderson or someone like that along with them to guide them along. So you can't just start throwing guys in here, there and everywhere. There has to be some sort of a system to it. They've done it really well so far. Matty Ray has played, I think it's around 295 minutes already. So, I mean, he's been given a lot of chance to shine, and he's certainly been very solid for Ulster so far. Nick Timley's getting a few more minutes now as well. Great to see Adam McBurney on the bench as well in Zebra. They'll get their chances as long as Ulster are smart about it. They've got pathways for these guys to progress. I think it's okay what they're doing at the moment. I don't think there's any other way that they can bring them through, really.
I think it's good that you mention Ferris and Henderson there, because people obviously see them as the gold standard and want to know why we're not bringing through more players like that. But you look at Ferris, obviously he's right up there with the best players that people of our age have seen play for Ulster. Made his Ireland debut at 21, was a Lion at 25. Hendo on the same scale, Ireland debut at 20, Lion by 25. So I think what Kyle's getting at is, do we need to give these guys exposure so we see them build into, say, Sean Reedy, somebody that got better and better and better with the more minutes they were given in the team, and is now a really, really solid pro 14 level back rower and pushing into that Ireland squad, winning caps the last 2 summers. But yeah, with the age profile of the young forwards that we're bringing through now, Adam kind of alluded to, John Andrew 24, Ross Keane 23 in a couple of weeks, Kyle McCall 25, Matty Ray 24, Timothy 22. It's not that we're going to give these boys minutes and that's what's stopping them become Ferris and Hendo. It's just those 2 boys are a different breed to what we've seen come through in the forward ranks here.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly, my question then, one of my friends wanted us to discuss that disallowed try on Friday night, and basically just wanted to know what happened.
Well, the decision was that Ulster changed lanes in a mall. In a mall, you have to keep going straight. And I'm no rules expert, so I might get something slightly wrong. But in a mall, you just have to drive straight. You can't start driving left, right, and centre all over the pitch. And what you can do is you can sort of shift a couple guys off to the side of a mall and then break them all off the side and sort of take away the defenders, keep them with the main mall and start breaking away on the other side. And you can't do that. That's what the the TMO said to the referee. That's what Ulster did. It was a very tough one. I mean, you can see why it was given. You can also make a case for it not being given. And that sounds like I'm trying to avoid the question altogether. But I mean, Jono made a very good point in the press conference. We only really saw one angle of it, and it was very difficult to tell. So, I mean, for me, I did think it was harsh. But look, maybe there is another angle that can say, they did.
Well, I think it looked like they were driven off the line to a certain extent by boys coming into the side, which is why I think we thought it was going to come back for a penalty. But look, you can argue all day whether it was technically to the letter of the laws or not. But I mean, you hear an Ulster accent come on the TMO, you think we're going to be sweet here, and then all of a sudden it's gone the other way. Bizarre. That's my takeaway from it.
And I've got any other questions?
Adam went into UAFC this week.
I did
to
indeed.
get our questions.
Oh,
yes,
everybody from the forums.
Yes, thank you all for your feedback. By the way, really appreciate it and keep it coming. But some of them have asked, what is the length of Les Kiss's contract? And what's sort of the deal with that? The answer is we don't actually know. We asked and we have not yet got a response. But the main thing that I'll let Johnny answer this one because he has more of a working knowledge of it than I do, but there is a clause. Well,
yeah, there's been a lot of talk about these clauses in the last year, I suppose. It was brought to everyone's attention by Pat Lam when he went to Bristol, and part of his reasoning for going to Bristol seemed to be the fact that there was this clause in his contract that he was taking umbrage with, that he could be sacked at, he said 6 months notice, so we'll take him at his word for that. And then subsequently we've seen Razzie Erasmus exercise his right to opt out of that contract with Munster. But David Nucifora, who just imagining everybody,
we all know and love.
Yeah, everybody's favourite man in this part of the world, gave a press briefing recently, and one of the things that he rather ominously said for any coach currently in a job was, there will come a day, I'm paraphrasing him here, not quoting him directly obviously, there will come a day when these clauses might work in our favour, which is obviously them looking at not coaches skipping out on other jobs by exercising these clauses, but people being told that in 6 months' time it's time to call the movers. So on the contract question is obviously being asked let's not beat around the bush on this. The contract question is being asked because these are people that don't want Les in a job.
Yeah.
There's no point in us sugarcoating this in any way. The interesting thing, I suppose, we're not going to have questions to the listeners, but the interesting thing that I would want to know would be what would the alternative be, you know, because we've seen it with Munster's coaching search. We've seen it with people that have come in before, you know, even the likes of Joe Schmidt, Michael Cheika. When these guys come in, they weren't really names. When Pat Lang came in, it was after he'd been at the Blues and had taken a lot of heat over there. Jake White's not coming through that door if Les gets sacked. Wayne Smith not coming through that door if Les gets sacked. So for me, the most likely outcome, if Les were to be out of a job, would be that the director of rugby probably becomes Bryn Cunningham, and Jono gets promoted to, well, he's not going to get promoted because he is head coach now, but Jono takes more of a role. I wrote this over the summer just before the season started, and it's not popular opinion, but it's still my opinion, so I'm going to say it anyway. This is the key season for Les Kiss, and everybody wants to see tangible signs of progress this season with Ulster. And personally, and it's a personal opinion, he deserves the chance to see this season with the new coaching staff in, and we'll see where Ulster are at the end. I don't think we're going to be in a situation where it's they've lost the Zebra, Les has to go. I don't think that's a rational way to deal with that result. My idea on this is that we should wait until the end of the season to see where we are. Obviously, people have less patience than that, and we can spend all day debating this back and forth, but for the sake of Gareth, he has to edit this, and me, he's got about 4 deadlines before I go to bed tonight. We'll maybe leave it there.
Yeah. Well, very quickly then, because we're nearly out of time, or any other business, one thing from the rugby world that has caught our eye over the last few days?
Yeah, well, Johnny and I were down on Monday at the European Rugby Champions Cup launch. Just great to see all the guys again. Wayne Pivac remembered me from my Rag and Bone Man days. But no, look, a lot of guys talking very positively ahead of the new season. EPCR certainly we're bringing up a few new things that they're going to be implementing over the next year or two with the competition. And yeah, it's events like those that sort of get you excited for the return of the European Games, you know, those big nights at the Kingspan. And no, it's just great to be down, although they did not hold back in their jokes at Scott Baldwin's expense. Let's put it that way.
No, I love October, as you say. It kind of gets the blood pumping for what's coming ahead. So we've got the 2 Interpros, we've got Europe coming back, and everybody is back in harness now. All the internationals are back, all the Lions that are fit are back, and so this is now where we get to see full strength teams going head to head for the next hopefully 4 weeks. So yeah, it's good. But Adam just mentioned Scott Baldwin there, and yeah, I assume he's been taking a bit of flack for what happened. For anyone who isn't aware, and I'm sure you all are by this stage, Osprey's out in South Africa preparing for a game against the Cheetahs, and it emerges not long before kickoff that their starting hooker is not playing because he's been bitten by a lion, which he petted through the bars of the cage. Oh, God. At first, I thought that my favourite part of the story, and we're not making light of it, we wish him a speedy recovery, but the interview that Steve Tandy gave in the build-up where he exonerated the lion, I just thought it was great. I mean, he was one step away from saying the lion's not that type of player. I really thought we were going to get that. But then the video emerged of Scott sticking his hand through the bars, getting bit by the lion. Obviously, there's a fair bit of commotion, but the one thing that I really really noticed from it was Alan Clark's voice of "You're all right, good lad." Just final and definitive proof that they breed them differently out in Dungannon. He's seen his forward being bitten by a lion, and his reaction was, "You're all right, you're grand." They're a hardy bunch out there.
Alan, we miss you.
And not strictly rugby, but worth giving a mention to a big Ulster fan, Jonathan Ray, who secured his third successive World Superbike title last Saturday, and he'll maybe be here at the Kingspan Stadium on Friday night. We're not sure. And just one final mention to the Kingspan Stadium ground staff who turned off their mowers about 2 seconds before we pressed record. So absolute champions. So from Jonathan Bradley.
Thanks very much, guys.
From Alan McHenry.
Cheers, guys.
And me, Gareth Hanna. It's ta-ta and farewell.